everybody. So what did you think of that last session? 10 sessions today. You are in for a ride. Enjoy it. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to introduce my guest. He is actually filling in. Originally, we were going to have someone here from New Jersey. Life happens. A personal emergency came up last night, first thing this morning. And my good friend Jeff Maass has jumped in to save us and fill the void. I needed a grizzled old vet like myself, and so he meets the criteria for that. So let's welcome to our Zoom digital stage Jeff Maass, everybody. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Dan, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And thanks for the last minute. I need you text fill in. I appreciate that.
No problem. Always a bride. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
So our topic today, I kind of brought you up to speed super fast in our text stream. Our topic today is going to be this shift in the market, and I'm going to be talking about that on and off, and everyone's going to be talking about that today, right? And there has been already. Our topic is going to be the shift in the market, and in my opinion, why it's not so bad. And so we're going to bring in, like I said, that grizzled old vet you and I have been selling since like the Fred Flintstone dinosaur days of, is this really like a dramatic shift? So give a little bit of history about yourself. Like, how long have you been selling? Obviously, you're crushing it right now in Orange County at Compass. Robert Revkin can give you a kudos for the hat today. But you've been you've been crushing real estate for a long time. So just give us a history. When did you start? How long you've been in real estate? And we'll go from there.
I've been in real estate a little over 32 years now. Started back in the, as you say, in the Flintstone days when we were pedaling by foot with Tarbell Realtors. Worked my way up to management there. Decided I wasn't very satisfied with management. Got back into sales. And have been in sales ever since, and loved every year of it.
All right, so 32 years, that puts it, what the heck is that? Like 1980, no, 70, do you even know?
It's old, it's old.
It's old, it's a while ago. All right, okay, and so you've seen some up and downs. How many up and downs have you seen in 32? Because I'm at it like 22 years now, and so I've seen almost 3. So you've seen 4 maybe, or are you saying 3?
I was going to say it's probably 4, some worse than others, but yeah, I've seen 4 major upticks and downticks in my career.
Okay, and that's interesting how you say 4 major upticks and downticks. Does this factor into one of those 4?
Well, this certainly factors in as a minor. I think looking back, we all have to realize that what happened post-COVID is an anomaly. That's, that wasn't normal and wasn't sustainable. So everybody that sat back on their laurels and enjoyed the ride, I hope it was a great ride, but the ride's over. And we're back to what I consider to be a normal market. This is the way the market is supposed to be, with getting close to an even balance between a buyer's market and the seller's market. Yes, as an agent, as a broker, you're going to have to work a lot harder than you did in the last 2.5 years, but that's the norm. What we've experienced in the last 2 to 3 years, again, was a complete blip in the scheme of real estate sales here in Orange County anyway.
And there's always an event that causes these, right? There's always an event that happens. For instance, the pandemic caused a ginormous uptick. The subprime meltdown caused a ginormous downtick. What was the first event that happened in your career that made it either go up or down that you can remember?
For me, it was the biggest one, Dan, was the subprime meltdown, and that was horrendous. However, I had the benefit of being able to see it coming and started to lean into REOs. And one of those years was the best year I had in real estate, with over 92 closings as a solo agent. And probably 95% of those were REOs. But that's just indicative of what kind of market it was. If you weren't in the REO market and you didn't have lender clients, then you were scrambling. And there literally was little, if any, business to be had.
Right. So let's talk about the market right now real quick, and then I want to back up to like the late 90s. So the market right now, let's just call it, today, August versus February. That sounds like about 6 months to me. 6 months ago, you put a home on the market, it sold with multiple offers, over list price, probably some sort of month to 2 month free rent back, and they had to name their firstborn after you. Right? That was February's offers or counter offers that were going out, it seemed like. And then all of a sudden we get this shift, and so here we are in August, and it is more balanced. But agents, and I see it, right? I mean, we have 60 agents now. Agents are losing their damn minds because like it's been on the market for 12 days and I don't have it sold. I don't even have any offers that I'm working with. Tomorrow's day 13. What am I going to do? And it's just completely foreign to people who started in real estate prior to the pandemic. Anybody who's come in the pandemic, that was in fact the norm, even though it's not normal. And even people who have been selling from 2010, 11 through March or April, that was sort of the norm. I mean, we've been in an upward trending market since, and you can argue when, depending on what part of the country. This is streaming coast to coast, so we got different regions and different states and different pockets that would argue 2010 versus 2011. But one of those two, it hasn't gone down or slowed down really since then. And so for agents, the first time having a shift, meaning it's not going through the roof up. Is it going down? We'll save that for a minute, but it's not going through the roof up. That's what's freaking them out. Do you agree with that? So let's.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. And it is going down. I mean, relatively speaking, from where we were 6 months ago, a year from now, it is going down. And my personal feeling is it will continue to go down marginally. Does that mean we're in a crash? Absolutely not. People bandy that word around. We're not even remotely close to crashes that you and I have experienced.
So let's go back to the late 90s. There's a variety of reasons, at least locally. Now, we can only really, on this interview, talk about locally. We don't understand what was happening in Chicago, D.C., Florida, or Texas. I don't think real well, but we do understand what was happening in Southern California in the late 90s. And we are coming out of a down market in 99, 2000. We started to go into an upward trending market, right? And so what we're seeing now is we're coming out of an upward trending market and going into a down. So it's kind of the opposite of that. But what did you notice as we were in a down market coming into an up market in the 99, 2000? Can you think back about what changes? Because what I want to think about is how will we know when it starts to shift again ahead of when everybody else realized? What did you notice was happening in 99, 2000 as the market started to go from flat to up?
Well, it was at that point in time, it was a function of mortgages, and it was a function of soft mortgages, and it was a function of buyers being able to qualify for loans that they had no business qualifying for, which propelled the market. People were in a buying frenzy, taking advantage of that type of situation, and you saw it coming early, I think, and you just kind of buckled up and went along for the ride, and it was a great ride as long as it lasted.
So, and that one lasted, it went a little nuts for about 6.5, 7 years until the subprime meltdown. Now, the difference between the subprime meltdown then and this little shift we're having now, right? Subprime meltdown was gigantic. This little shift we're having now, not so much. You had gotten into the REO game, so that helped your business. You mentioned that other agents really struggled because in our particular area, it was sort of a buy one, get one free, right? It was like 50% reduction in the value of the properties, and over 50% of the inventory was being controlled by a handful of REO agents. In this market, we have not seen a REO or foreclosure rise. Agreed?
Yeah, and don't agree, but don't get me wrong. This shift is not a function of mortgages or mortgage rates or lending practices by any means. This shift that we saw in the last couple of years is strictly a function of 2%, 2.5% money, and you would have been foolish at the time not to take advantage of it. And that was great. But again, that was unseen, unheard of, at least in our lifetimes. So, yeah, it was great, but it wasn't the norm.
So now we are in this little shift down. What are some things that the REO market was different? But we've talked just real quick before we got on live about balance, and you're excited about. I asked you about your weekend. So let's talk about that a little bit. For agents today, rather than losing their minds about what's happening in the market, let's take it from someone, you, myself, with a longer view about what this actually looks like in the history of like real estate markets. What were you going to tell me? Because you said you wanted to hold it back about this weekend in a normal market.
You know, I think if you're a buyer's agent, you should be salivating right now compared to where you were in the past 2 years. Um, the idea of banging your head against the wall, going into multiple offer situations with 10, 15, 20 offers, had to be off-putting. I don't work with that many buyers, but the buyers I did work with, I experienced it with them. That was nuts. Buyer's agents should be enjoying what they're seeing right now. You're in a position now of plenty of inventory relative to where we were 6 months, a year from now. Reasonable prices. Prices are dropping. Every time you look in the MLS, you see price reductions on over 50% of the properties that have been on the market for over 2 weeks. So we're getting back to reasonable pricing. And quite honestly, it's a function of educating your clients. 5% money, while contrasted with 2% money, seems high, but in the whole scheme of things, 5% money is great money, especially when you look at the fact that you're purchasing at a lower price these days than you were 6 months, a year and a half ago. So it all balances out, but I think the key factor here is it's important for agents to educate their clients who have still bought into the fact that 5% money is ridiculous. I'm going to sit it out, wait till rates get lower. Here's a newsflash. Rates aren't going to get lower for the next couple of years. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, you're losing a whole lot of money in deductions, if nothing else, by virtue of sitting on the sidelines.
I agree. I think rates might flutter a half a point. They might hit 4.5, 4.75, but they're not going to hit low fours. They're not going to hit threes, in my opinion, right?
Yep.
That's not the drop they're going to see. And meanwhile, what's going on with prices? You mentioned the 2 weeks. We actually did a study in our office last week. One of my agents did it, and he pulled up a certain city, and every single sale in the city, he went back and looked at the solds, and if it had been on the market for 12 days or less, it sold for over list price. There was a clear line. 12 days or less, it sold over list price. There wasn't one home that sold in under 12 days that was under list. There also wasn't one home that had been on the market for 13 days that sold for at or over list price. So 13 days was that delineating line between you're going to get multiple offers and probably still create a bidding war, or now you probably need to play into a normal real estate market and have some room to negotiate.
And I think day 13 is about that point where you start discussing a price reduction.
Yeah, if not earlier. Maybe you start discussing a price reduction at time of listing, if by day 13 to 14 you don't have the results, so that you don't just whack-a-mole them on the 13th day, but they even know ahead of time that it's something that could be coming. We're going to test the market just a bit.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know, the contrast to buyers educating their clients, it's critical that listing agents educate their clients as well, because most of these clients are still living in that heyday of 6 months, a year ago. My neighbor's house sold for X amount of dollars in 24 hours with 15 offers. And they're still living in that dreamland. And if that's where their expectations are, they're in for a rude disappointment. So agents can't go in and foster that mentality that sellers still have. Got to be honest, you can't show them comps from 6 months, a year ago, and set their expectation level there. That's just not real world anymore.
You know what I love? I love that real estate agents find a way to complain regardless of the situation. This is one of my favorite things about our industry. Back in 2021, agents were complaining that I hate getting listings because I have to review 25 or 30 offers, and it's so hard to counter them all and keep them all organized. That was one complaint. Now, fast forward a year later, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. I hate having this listing because it's not selling. All right, so which one do you want? Do you want a lot of offers, or do you want no offers that you've got to keep the listing going? Or buyers a year ago, agents working with buyers. There's nothing to sell. It's so challenging. You mentioned butting your head up against the wall, and now fast forward to today. There's so much stuff that's out there. My buyers can't make a decision. like we're really good, no matter what the thing thrown at us is, of finding a way to complain about it. I feel like in the industry. So you're in a pretty big office. What are some of the interesting, funny rumblings you might hear agents saying?
Well, I think the benefit of working, for me, the benefit of working at a larger brokerage is we've got, for the most part, all experienced agents that have been in the business for 10 years plus, and all relatively successful agents. So they're leaning into the fact, and we've talked about it, we do talk about it, leaning into the fact that education is critical, is clients have to be on the same page we are. They have to be seeing the same things we are. So that's why when you're sitting down either in a buyer consultation or in a listing presentation, it's important that sellers are able to wrap their head around what's happening today, not what happened in the past. Because going forward, it's going to be this way. So if you're going to list your property based on comps that closed 6 months ago, 8 months ago, you're going to be sitting outside for a while. Whereas if an agent has educated you to let you know that, look, we're seeing price reductions on a daily basis with homes in your price range, in your tracked model matches for you. So ignore what those properties sold for 6 or 8 months ago. It's just not happening anymore. So key is setting that bar where it needs to be so the expectations aren't too high with a seller, which ends up being a mess down the road when the property hasn't sold.
So newer agents, and by newer, I mean everybody from you know you're really old when you say newer agents, and it's everybody for like the last decade plus. But like 2000.
That's everybody that works for your company.
There you go. 2000. I have like 7 who don't meet that criteria. But 2008, 9, maybe 10 or newer only have ridden an upward trending market. What advice would you have for them during this shift?
You know, you got to get back to basics, and grizzled vets like you and I know what that means. That means getting out and door knocking. That means sitting open houses multiple days of the week. That means getting back to grinding it out. That means finding ways, whether it be social media or other vehicles, to get your brand out there. But again, the basics, open houses, especially as a newer agent, if you don't have an established database, sphere of influence, it's critical to build that up. That is your pipeline for the future. How are you going to generate these clients if you don't have them? And the answer is you got to be out there. So you and I wouldn't resort to this at this point, but as a newer agent, you got to do open houses. You got to run some ads. You got to do what you got to do. Start banging on doors. COVID's over. People aren't as freaked out as they were during COVID, and I could certainly understand that. But now's the time to get back to that.
You mentioned earlier that you got to work a lot harder now. Mike Ferry used to say this thing, that in a market that had shifted, that you would have to work twice as hard to make the same amount of money. What do you think about that thought process?
Couldn't agree more. It's, you know what, there's no low-hanging fruit out there anymore. Is you're now competing. It's not a matter of sitting back and waiting for the business to come to you. We're back in a mode where you have to go out and get that business. And there's X number of agents out there with that same mindset. So you're competing now. You didn't have to compete before. Business was falling into your lap for no reason at all. It's simply not going to happen that way anymore. So you do have to work twice as hard, and you probably have to take advantage of some different vehicles to get you there.
All right. Any parting thoughts for our audience here today for Real Estate Revive?
You know, I think it's mindset, Dan. Lean into the fact that this is a good market. Lean into the fact that once you educate your clients, business is going to be a lot easier for you. 5% money compared to what you and I have seen over our lifetime, 18, 19% money. 5% money is great money. Start digging down and educating clients, especially buyers. If you're a newer agent working with buyers, get away from price point. Get into what my monthly nut is. So I'm not buying an $800,000 house. I'm buying a $3,200 a month payment. So it's all mindset, both from an agent's perspective as well as a buyer and seller's perspective.
You know, and at some point that rate will drop. Maybe it's not going to drop this month or even this year, but at some point that rate will go back into the 4.5 rate, right? 5.5 or something.
Yeah,
So
and I know where you're going with this. And I watched a podcast by a guy that I've got a lot of respect for, Tom Toole out of Philadelphia. And a lot of us have preached that mantra that buy the house, date the rate.
Right.
Meaning, you know, at some point rates are going to come down and you can refinance the property and get into a lower rate. I'm not sure we're doing our clients a real service by preaching that, because there's no guarantee that rates are going to come down. So to put that out there, I think is a little bit of a deception. So, you know, again, I think you have to emphasize 5% money isn't bad, but more importantly, let's look at what your monthly nut is. Is that affordable? Can you live with it? Does it work for you? Does it get you into the property that you want? If it checks those boxes, there's no reason not to pull the trigger.
All right, so some good advice there, because we do hear a lot of the date the rate thing right now. Good advice about finding new channels, good advice about getting out and working harder, good advice about being flexible. You know, every market that we've had up and down, it's been related to mortgages, it's been related to base closures, it's been related to bank scandals and savings and loan. And this is just another shift. But I agree, like you said in the very beginning, it's minor. It's a shift, but it's actually, in my opinion, good for the market, good for the agents, good for the buyers. Might not be awesome for the sellers, but it's pretty much great for everybody else because it's what we needed. It was time. So thank you for being here. Thank you for jumping on and saving my butt today at the last minute. I appreciate you. We will have to take our Hemingway bikes out sometime soon and go on a bike ride. And you continue to do what you do best, crush it in South Orange County. Have a fantastic day, and I thank you very much for being here. I'm going to move over.
Dan, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
You are welcome. All right, everybody. So here's where we are. 10 different sessions today. You've got a couple under your belt. You've got a lot more to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching Real Estate Revival.